Welcome to video 2, Item Writing. Writing a test item involves providing a stimulus, which will lead to a required response. The form the stimulus takes depends on the type of item chosen. Choice of item type may be limited by the type of input, but is principally determined by the expected response. In other words, the type of item used should be a function of the type of language ability that is being tested. A test is composed of a number of tasks. The more tightly controlled type of task, the kind used to test reading skills, structural competence, listening and writing at sentence level, is made up of a combination of the rubric, input consisting of a stimulus such as a text, and the candidate's response based on items of various types, whether selected or produced, which is then scored against a key or a mark scheme. In this video we'll take a look at these components and what to look out for when writing them. A vital thought should go into the wording of the rubrics or instructions for the tasks. The definition of rubric is the instructions given to a candidate on how to respond to a particular input. These instructions should include how and where the response is to be recorded, and the rubric must present as clearly as possible the tasks which the examiner is setting the candidate. There should be no room for confusion, no need for clarification, as both are likely to create anxiety in the candidate and impair his or her performance and affect the reliability and validity of the test. Important details which may need to be provided in rubrics include exactly where to find the accompanying input, for example, a page number, how many words to use in the answer, whether or not the same answer may be chosen more than once, whether or not answers may be written in any order, the approximate number of words to produce for writing tasks, clear indications of the extent of any choice among tasks, the number of times a listening text will be heard, constraints on the degree to which the input material can be used, and also an indication of the criteria for successfully completing the task. When selecting texts for a task as input, it is very important to use texts which are suitable for the purpose of testing the particular candidate population concerned. The level of difficulty of the language must be appropriate, and the subject matter suitable for the candidate's probable age group and other aspects of their background. In general, topics which might cause distress or offense should be avoided. Two issues concerning texts will be discussed here: the question of authenticity and the question of what makes a text difficult. A much debated issue affecting choice of texts for teaching as well as for testing is that of authenticity. Is it more appropriate to the candidate's needs for the examination to include a text, in a test of reading skills, for example, which is taken from a genuine source, such as a newspaper or magazine, or a text written by a test provider or item writer? The newspaper or magazine text may seem more appropriate because it is derived from real-life use of language, written for native speakers of the language and not just for the purposes of language testing. Being able to deal with the texts a native speaker can deal with may be the goal of the learner, and so this is the language she or he should be exposed to and tested on. It has been argued that authenticity is a consequence of the interaction between reader and the text, and not simply a quality of the text alone. Even a quick look at a range of language use contained in a variety of newspapers and magazines shows that not all written texts are authentic for all readers. Who the reader is, the reader's purpose in looking at the text, the writer's purpose, and the degree of social and cultural match between reader and text all have a bearing on the authenticity of the text for that reader. If there is very little match between the factual and cultural knowledge contained in the text and that possessed by the reader, think of an elderly opera lover attempting to read a teenage rock magazine, there may be little authenticity in the experience of reading it. As native speakers, we exercise a degree of choice of texts which are authentic for us and avoid those which are not. How then can one choose appropriate texts from genuine sources, such as newspapers and magazines, and be sure that they have any authenticity for learners of a language who may never have been to any of the countries where that language is spoken, and who cannot be assumed to share any of the social and cultural knowledge of the native speakers for whom the texts were written? So, to sum this up, test writers should make use of texts, situational context, and tasks which simulate real life without trying to replicate it exactly. They should attempt to use situations and tasks which are likely to be familiar and relevant to the intended test taker at the given level. And they should make clear, in providing context, the purpose for carrying out a particular task, as well as make clear the intended audience. And they should make clear the criteria for success in completing the task. Test writers and developers regularly have to deal with the concept of what constitutes text difficulty. With reference to both written and spoken texts, it is necessary to be aware that there are a number of factors which affect the degree of difficulty readers and listeners experience in processing them. The linguistic structure of the text. A text which is composed of short, simple sentences using the active voice is perceived as easier than one composed of long, complex sentences which include much use of the passive. Structures and vocabulary which are relatively familiar to candidates are easier than those which they are less familiar with. The context in which the text is placed. Whether the text is spoken or written, it is easier to process if it addresses readers or listeners directly, rather than putting them in the position of the fly on the wall, observing interaction between other characters. The visual support provided by video in a listening text, pictures or diagrams makes a text easier, as does the absence of pressure to deal with the text in a limited time. If the text is placed in a context which creates an information gap, giving candidates a compelling reason to wish to extract information from the text, this too helps to make it easier. The content of a text. In a narrative, a small number of clearly differentiated characters are easiest to deal with. For example, a story about two women and two men who are of different ages, have dissimilar names to one one another and clearly presenting contrasting characters is perceived easier than a story which involves a great number of lightly sketched minor characters. The sequence of events in a narrative is easiest when most straightforward, with events described in the order in which they take place, without the use of flashbacks. If there is a clear link between events, such as cause and effect, this also makes the text easier than one which appears to consist of unrelated events. The listener or reader who already possesses knowledge structures with the new narrative fits into finds it less difficult than someone who lacks these. The type of interaction and the relationship which it creates between text and reader or listener. Extremely formal texts expressing a cold relationship or a very informal, intimate style are both likely to cause more difficulty to readers or listeners than a relatively neutral or moderately informed style. Thank you. Coming up in video 3, item type.